If you're a licensed driver in the United States, 2026 could change everything you think you know about keeping your license. Not because you caused an accident, not because you broke traffic laws, but because one letter you didn't open, one payment that failed, or one deadline you didn't realize mattered could quietly suspend your license without a police stop, without a warning call, and without you knowing it happened. This isn't a future threat. It's already happening. And in 2026, the system becomes even stricter. Tonight, we break down why safe, responsible drivers are being caught off guard and what you must do now to protect your license and your independence. Why licenses are being suspended. Even when drivers did nothing wrong for most of their lives, American drivers have believed a simple rule. If you drive safely, avoid accidents, and follow traffic laws, your license is secure. That belief shaped how people drove for decades. Today, that belief is no longer reliable. Across the country, driver's licenses are being suspended for reasons that have nothing to do with dangerous driving. No speeding, no DUIs, no crashes. Instead, suspensions are increasingly tied to paperwork, missed deadlines, automated systems, and data mismatches that drivers often don't even realize exist. What makes this so dangerous is how quietly it happens. In many cases, there is no dramatic warning. A notice may be mailed to an old address, an email may go unread, a deadline may pass without urgency, and while life continues as normal, the system moves forward automatically. By the time many drivers discover the problem, the suspension is already active. Legally, they are no longer allowed to drive, even though nothing about their behavior behind the wheel has changed. This shift didn't happen overnight. It's the result of how DMVs now operate. Decisions that once involved human review are now handled by automated systems. Insurance databases, medical reporting, license records, and enforcement tools are connected in real time. When a requirement is missed, the system does not pause to consider intent or driving history. It simply applies the penalty. That is why so many responsible drivers feel blindsided. Not because they became unsafe, but because the rules of enforcement changed quietly and forgiveness disappeared without announcement. Comment below, did you know licenses could now be suspended for paperwork or missed notices, not bad driving? Your answer may help other drivers realize how exposed they really are. The three forces that quietly changed, how DMVs operate. To understand why licenses are being suspended so easily today, you have to understand what changed behind the scenes. This is not the result of one single new rule. It is the result of three powerful forces colliding at the same time and permanently reshaping how DMVs operate across the United States. The first force is demographic. America is aging. Drivers over the age of 65 are now the fastest growing group on the road. States face increasing pressure to manage risk, not because older drivers are careless, but because accidents involving older drivers tend to be more costly. From a policy standpoint, this has led to tighter oversight and fewer second chances. The second force is automation. This is where the real shift happens. DMVs no longer rely on paper files or manual reviews. Insurance databases, medical reporting systems, vehicle registration, and license records are now connected in real time. When a requirement is missed, enforcement does not wait for a person to review the situation. The system acts automatically. No judgment, no discretion. The third force is financial. Accident costs, insurance payouts, and administrative expenses have all increased sharply. States are under pressure to reduce losses and improve efficiency. Automated enforcement is cheaper than warnings, education, or human review. From the system's perspective, strict automation makes economic sense. When these three forces combine, something critical disappears. Forgiveness. What once triggered reminders now triggers suspensions. And most drivers never realized the system had already changed until it was too late. The insurance rule causing more suspensions than anything else. If there is one rule responsible for more surprise license suspensions than any other, it is this one: continuous insurance monitoring. Most drivers believe that if they've had the same insurance company for years, they're safe. That belief is exactly why so many responsible drivers are being blindsided. Under today's system, loyalty does not matter. Intent does not matter. Only real-time coverage matters. In many states, DMVs now monitor insurance status electronically and continuously. Insurance companies and DMVs are connected in real time. The moment coverage lapses, even briefly, the system detects it. There is no grace period built into the technology. What makes this especially dangerous is how ordinary the trigger usually is. A credit card expires, an automatic payment fails, you forget to update the card. The confirmation email goes to an address you no longer check. Within days, sometimes hours, the system records an insurance lapse. Once that happens, consequences begin immediately. Vehicle registration can be suspended automatically. A notice is mailed, but by the time it arrives, the suspension may already be active. Legally, you are no longer allowed to drive, even though nothing about your driving behavior has changed. If you're stopped during this window, even for something minor, your vehicle can be towed. Fees pile up fast, and insurance companies now see the lapse on your record, often raising premiums for years afterward. This rule does not punish reckless driving. It punishes administrative mistakes. And because enforcement is automatic, fixing the problem later does not undo the damage already done. How a doctor's visit can quietly cost you your license. For many drivers, the idea that a routine doctor's visit could affect their driver's license sounds almost impossible. But under today's system, it is not only possible, it is increasingly common. In many states, physicians are legally allowed and in some cases required to report medical conditions that could impact a person's ability to drive safely. This is not about punishment, it is about liability. But once a report enters the system, what happens next is no longer up to the doctor or the driver. Conditions commonly reported include vision impairment, seizure disorders, fainting episodes, cognitive decline, and poorly controlled diabetes. In many cases, the driver feels fine and has been driving safely for years. That history does not stop the system from acting. Here is how suspensions often begin. A doctor notes a condition during an appointment. A report is submitted as part of standard procedure. Weeks later, the DMV mails a notice requesting medical clearance, vision testing, or additional documentation. This is where danger sets in. Many drivers assume the notice is routine or not urgent. Some don't open it right away. Others plan to respond later. 30 days pass. The system does not wait. The license is suspended administratively, often without a second notice or reminder. The most alarming part is this. Many people don't realize their license has been suspended until they are stopped for a minor issue. Suddenly, they are facing charges for driving on a suspended license, an offense that can carry criminal penalties. In an automated system, medical paperwork is not optional. It is a deadline, and missing it can quietly take away your right to drive. Age-based renewals. When the rules suddenly change for decades, renewing a driver's license was routine. You waited for the notice, renewed online or by mail, and went on with your life. For many older drivers, that routine has quietly disappeared, and the change is catching people off guard. Across the country, age-based renewal rules have tightened. In many states, once a driver reaches a certain age, online renewals are no longer allowed. Mail renewals are eliminated. In-person visits become mandatory. Vision tests are required. And in some cases, additional medical review is triggered automatically. And the most dangerous part is that these changes are not always clearly communicated. Many drivers assume renewal will work the same way it always has. They try to renew online, get rejected, and suddenly find themselves scrambling to schedule a DMV appointment, often weeks or months out. At the DMV, pressure matters. Vision tests are conducted under unfamiliar lighting, time limits, and stress. A driver who sees perfectly well in daily life may struggle just enough to raise concerns. That can lead to restricted licenses, additional testing, or temporary approvals instead of full renewal. None of this is designed to punish older drivers. The stated goal is safety, but the system does not account for surprise. If your license expires while you are waiting for an appointment or medical clearance, you may be legally unable to drive, even though you did everything you thought was required. In an automated system, assumptions are dangerous. Age-based rules don't wait for understanding. They enforce deadlines. And for many drivers, preparation, not driving ability, is what now determines whether they keep their license. Distracted driving, why stopping at a red light? No longer protects you for years. Many drivers believed they were being responsible if they only checked their phone while stopped. At a red light, in traffic, in a parking lot. That habit felt harmless, and for a long time it mostly was. That is no longer true. Under modern distracted driving laws, touching a phone while the engine is running can count as a violation, even if the vehicle is completely stopped. From the system's perspective, movement no longer matters. If the car is on, enforcement applies. This is where thousands of careful drivers are getting caught off guard. They adjust navigation, they glance at a notification, they tap the screen to change music, they assume stopping makes it safe, the law no longer agrees, penalties escalate quickly. A first offense often carries a fine between $100 and $250. A second offense can mean higher fines, points added to your license, and automatic notifications sent to your insurance company. Repeated violations can lead directly to license suspension in some states. What makes this rule especially unforgiving is visibility. Officers don't need proof of intent. They only need to see the phone in your hand. And in some jurisdictions, camera systems now assist enforcement by documenting phone use without an officer stopping the vehicle. If distracted driving is involved in even a minor accident, the consequences grow more severe. What might have been a simple fender bender can escalate to reckless driving charges. In today's system, caution is no longer about timing, it's about habit. If the engine is on, the safest rule is simple. Don't touch the phone. Anything else quietly puts your license at risk. Why small mistakes now lead to long-term consequences. One of the hardest truths for drivers to accept under the new system is this: mistakes no longer stay small. What once felt like a minor issue now carries consequences that can follow you for years. In the past, a license suspension often meant paying a fee, fixing the problem, and moving on. Today, a suspension is treated as a serious risk marker, regardless of why it happened. Insurance companies respond immediately. Premiums rise, often for 3 to 5 years. In many cases, drivers are required to file an SR-22, officially labeling them as high risk. And the damage doesn't stop with insurance. A suspension becomes part of your permanent digital driving record. Automated systems do not forget. Even after reinstatement, that history remains visible during renewals, traffic stops, and future reviews. What makes this especially painful is how disproportionate it feels. A missed insurance payment, a delayed medical form, a misunderstood renewal rule. None of these involve reckless driving, yet the system treats them as indicators of risk, not context. This is the cost of automation. Enforcement becomes faster and more efficient, but also more unforgiving. There is no human looking at your decades of safe driving and deciding you deserve a break. A deadline is either met or missed. A document is either received or not. That is why so many responsible drivers feel blindsided. The rules didn't suddenly change overnight, but the consequences did. And once those consequences are triggered, reversing the damage is far harder than preventing it in the first place. The action plan: what every driver must do before 2026. By now, one thing should be clear. Waiting is the most expensive choice a driver can make. The system that will be fully active in 2026 is already operating in many states, and it does not reward last-minute reactions. It rewards preparation. The first step is reviewing your license status today, not later. Check the expiration date, especially if it falls in 2026 or earlier. Many drivers assume renewal rules will stay the same. They won't. Knowing what your state requires now gives you time to schedule appointments, prepare documentation, and avoid rushed decisions. Second, review your insurance setup carefully. Confirm that automatic payments are active, payment methods are current, and contact information is correct. One failed payment is enough to trigger suspension under continuous monitoring. This single step prevents more suspensions than almost anything else. Third, address medical and vision issues early. If you have upcoming appointments, ask clear questions about how conditions are reported. If vision testing may be required, prepare for it before DMV deadlines create pressure. Fourth, change habits behind the wheel. Phone use must stop entirely when the engine is on. Speed consistency matters more than momentary caution. These habits protect you not just legally, but financially. Finally, keep records. Save notices, document responses, track deadlines. In an automated system, proof is protection. Preparing now doesn't mean you expect trouble. It means you refuse to be surprised by a system that no longer forgives mistakes. Why so many drivers don't realize their license is already suspended. One of the most dangerous aspects of the current DMV system is not the suspension itself. It's how often drivers don't know it has already happened. Under older systems, license suspensions usually involve direct interaction, a court appearance, a police stop, a clear warning. Today, that visibility is gone. Suspensions are increasingly administrative, automated, and silent. Most drivers first assume something is wrong when a registration renewal fails or an insurance company asks questions. Others don't find out until they are stopped for something minor, a broken taillight, a routine checkpoint, or even a parking issue. That's when the shock hits. The license has already been suspended. How does this happen? Notices are mailed to outdated addresses. Emails land in spam folders. Online DMV accounts go unchecked. Deadlines pass quietly while life continues as normal. The system does not confirm you received the warning. It only confirms whether you responded. And once a suspension is active, intent no longer matters. From a legal standpoint, driving is now illegal, even if you had no idea. Being caught driving on a suspended license can result in criminal charges, heavy fines, vehicle impoundment, and further delays before reinstatement. What makes this especially painful is that many of these suspensions are preventable. The problem isn't dangerous driving, it's communication gaps in an automated system that assumes you are checking constantly. In today's environment, not knowing is not a defense. Awareness is now part of the responsibility of holding a license, and drivers who don't adapt to that reality are the ones most likely to pay the highest price. The domino effect. After a suspension begins. Once a license suspension begins, the damage rarely stops at the suspension itself. What many drivers don't expect is how quickly one administrative action triggers a chain reaction across multiple systems, each one making the situation harder and more expensive to fix. The first domino usually falls with insurance. As soon as a suspension is recorded, insurance companies are notified. From their perspective, a suspended license signals elevated risk regardless of the reason. Premiums often increase immediately. Some drivers are dropped entirely and forced to seek high-risk coverage at significantly higher cost. Next comes registration. In many states, driving privileges, vehicle registration, and insurance status are linked. A suspended license can lead to registration suspension, even if the vehicle itself is fully insured. Driving with suspended registration carries its own penalties, including fines and vehicle impoundment. Employment is often affected as well. Jobs that require driving, even occasionally, may no longer be available. For older drivers, this can disrupt part-time work, caregiving responsibilities, or volunteer roles that depend on mobility. What makes this domino effect so devastating is timing. These consequences often unfold faster than drivers can respond. By the time someone realizes the scope of the problem, multiple agencies are already involved, each with separate requirements, fees, and deadlines. Fixing one issue does not automatically fix the others. Reinstating a license does not instantly restore insurance rates. Clearing registration does not erase the suspension from your record. This is why experts emphasize prevention. In an automated system, stopping the first domino from falling is far easier and far cheaper than trying to stand everything back up afterward. Why 2026 is the most dangerous year to be unprepared. Many drivers assume 2026 is just another year when rules will tighten slightly and then life will go on. That assumption is exactly what makes 2026 so dangerous. By that year, the system's driving license suspensions are no longer transitioning. They are fully operational. Insurance monitoring, medical reporting, age-based renewals, and distracted driving enforcement all converge at scale. What was once uneven or delayed becomes synchronized and immediate. This means mistakes won't surface slowly anymore. They will surface all at once. A missed insurance payment, an unanswered DMV letter, and an expired renewal can overlap, triggering suspension faster than a driver can react. What makes 2026 different from previous years is volume. More drivers are being monitored, more data sources are connected, more decisions are automated, and fewer cases are reviewed by humans before action is taken. For older drivers, this timing is especially risky. Many licenses expire around this period. Medical reviews become more common. Renewal rules are stricter, and assumptions based on decades of driving experience no longer protect against administrative failure. Transportation officials describe this as an efficiency milestone. From a driver's perspective, it feels unforgiving. There is no learning curve built into the system. It assumes you already know the rules and have already adjusted. That is why 2026 is not the year to react. It is the year consequences accelerate. Drivers who wait until then are far more likely to face suspension, not because they drove dangerously, but because they underestimated how fast the system now moves. How to protect your license and your independence long term. At this stage, protecting your driver's license is no longer just about avoiding tickets. It is about protecting your independence. For many Americans, especially older adults, losing the ability to drive even temporarily can change daily life overnight. The most important shift drivers must make is mental. You can no longer treat DMV tasks as low priority errands. In an automated system, paperwork, deadlines, and confirmations matter just as much as safe driving. Missing a form can now have the same impact as a serious violation. Long-term protection starts with consistency. Keep your contact information updated everywhere: DMV, insurance, and medical providers. A single outdated address can break communication and start a chain reaction you never see coming. Next is routine self-checks. Set calendar reminders to review insurance payments, license status, and renewal rules at least twice a year. Do not assume nothing has changed. Rules now change faster than habits. Medical transparency also matters. If a condition exists, deal with it proactively. Complete forms early. Schedule required tests before deadlines. Drivers who respond first keep control. Drivers who wait are forced to react. Finally, accept that the system does not look backward anymore. It does not reward decades of safe driving if current compliance is missing. What protects you is alignment today, not history. In this new environment, independence is no longer protected by experience alone. It is protected by attention, preparation, and follow-through. And the drivers who adapt now are the ones who keep their freedom later. Why older drivers feel the impact first? While the new DMV enforcement system applies to drivers of all ages, older drivers are almost always the first to feel its effects. Not because they are worse drivers, but because the system places them under closer administrative pressure from multiple directions at once. Age-based renewal rules are one major factor. As drivers get older, renewal periods often shorten. Online renewals disappear. In-person visits become mandatory. Vision tests are required more frequently. Each added requirement creates another deadline and another opportunity for something to go wrong. Medical reporting adds another layer of exposure. Older adults are more likely to have regular doctor visits, more diagnoses, and more medical documentation flowing through the system. Even well-managed conditions can trigger reports that require follow-up paperwork. Missing a single response window can lead to suspension, regardless of actual driving ability. There is also a technology gap that the system does not account for. Notices arrive by email or online portals. Deadlines are tracked digitally. Drivers who are less comfortable with constant online monitoring are more likely to miss critical updates, not because they don't care, but because the system assumes habits they may not have. What makes this especially painful is dependence. Older drivers often rely on their license for medical appointments, groceries, caregiving, and maintaining independence. A sudden suspension doesn't just create inconvenience, it can isolate someone overnight. This is why preparation matters most for older drivers, not because they are unsafe, but because the system is unforgiving, and those who face the most rules also face the most risk when even one deadline is missed. The assumptions that are getting responsible drivers in trouble. One of the biggest reasons so many responsible drivers are losing their licenses is not recklessness. It's assumption. Beliefs that used to be mostly true, but are now quietly outdated. The first dangerous assumption is, if something was wrong, someone would call me. Under the current system, that is no longer how enforcement works. Notices are mailed, emails are sent, and deadlines are set, but the system does not confirm you actually received or understood them. If you miss the message, the system still moves forward. Another common belief is, I've been driving safely for decades, so they'll work with me. That assumption no longer holds weight in automated enforcement. The system does not see your history the way a human officer once did. It sees data, deadlines met or missed, documents received or not received. Safe driving history does not cancel administrative non-compliance. Many drivers also believe, I fixed the problem, so everything should be fine now. But under the new rules, fixing an issue late does not erase the violation. Insurance lapses, suspensions, and missed deadlines remain on your digital record long after the situation is corrected. Another risky assumption is, this only happens to people who break the law. In reality, the majority of suspensions now involve paperwork, payments, and reporting, not dangerous behavior. These assumptions create comfort, and comfort leads to delay. In an automated system, delay is expensive. Understanding what no longer protects you is just as important as knowing what does. And drivers who continue relying on old assumptions are the ones most likely to be shocked when consequences arrive without warning. The final warning: prepare now or lose your license in 2026. At this point, the message should be unmistakably clear. License suspensions in 2026 will not happen because millions of Americans suddenly became bad drivers. They will happen because the system no longer waits, no longer warns, and no longer forgives administrative mistakes. The rules themselves are not new. What is new is how aggressively and automatically they are enforced. Insurance coverage is monitored every day. Medical reports move directly into DMV systems. Renewal rules change based on age without clear reminders. Deadlines arrive quietly and disappear just as fast. For decades, drivers relied on common sense expectations. If something was serious, someone would call. If a mistake was small, it could be fixed. If you had a clean record, you would get some flexibility. That world is gone. In 2026, the system does not ask how long you've driven safely. It does not ask why a payment failed or why a letter was missed. It only checks whether requirements were met on time. If they weren't, the suspension happens first, and explanations come later, if at all. This is why preparation is no longer optional. Checking insurance, confirming renewal rules, responding immediately to DMV notices, and changing everyday habits are no longer extra careful. They are the minimum required to stay legal on the road. For many people, driving is independence. It's medical care, it's groceries, it's seeing family without asking for help. Losing a license, even temporarily, can change daily life overnight. 2026 is not about fear. It's about awareness. Drivers who prepare now will barely feel the transition. Drivers who don't may learn the hard way after their license is already gone. Prepare now, or let the system decide for you.